It is 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time on this Wednesday, August 22nd. This is a brief update on Tropical Storm Isaac. As of the 5 a.m. official advisory from the National Hurricane Center, the center of circulation is located at 15.5 degrees north and 57.3 degrees west. It's still moving just north of due west at 18 miles per hour, and maximum sustained winds are 45 miles per hour. The center of circulation is forecast to pass over the Leeward Island chain sometime late tonight into early Thursday morning, where tropical storm warnings are in effect, and out toward the northwest we still have hurricane watches in effect for all of Puerto Rico, and a new hurricane watch has now been issued for the entire southeast portion of the Dominican Republic. Isaac is expected to strengthen into an 85 to 86 mile per hour Category 1 hurricane once just to the south of Puerto Rico, so interest there should be bracing for the worst case scenario, that being Category 1 hurricane force winds, and heavy rainfall including flash flooding and power outages are all very distinct possibilities. Interest in Hispaniola should be prepared for torrential rainfall and flash flooding along with mudslides and higher terrain, and it's forecast to hit Haiti and the Dominican Republic as a Category 1. Now, as the system moves over Haiti and eastern Cuba, it will temporarily weaken, but the Hurricane Center is forecasting re-strengthening over extremely warm water temperatures between Cuba and the Florida Peninsula, and finally by 2 a.m. on Monday they are forecasting the storm to have intensified with 90 to 95 mile per hour sustained winds as it is sitting just to the south of Miami. However, at this time, I do want you to take notice of how large this cone of error is by day 5. And the storm could still be located as far west as the southeast Gulf of Mexico, or as far east as the Bahamas or the West Atlantic. The latest radar animation out of the Lesser Antilles confirms that we already have squalls associated with Tropical Storm Isaac already impacting the islands, and each squall that comes about over the course of the day and into Wednesday evening should become a little bit more severe, although we're still not expecting more than tropical storm force wind gusts over the next 24 to 36 hours. Despite the latest impressive look of Tropical Storm Isaac on satellite imagery, the hurricane hunters which are currently flying through the storm have not found anything overly impressive, and there are no signs that Isaac is strengthening at this time, at least based on the wind reports. However, it does appear that the overall circulation is becoming better defined on the enhanced infrared and the standard infrared along with the shortwave, and therefore we do believe that the winds will gradually begin to increase sometime later this morning, and the overall idea that this will be a strengthening tropical storm on the verge of hurricane status once in the eastern Caribbean appears to be valid. The water vapor, which gives us a good understanding as to what is occurring in the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere, is showing that we are dealing with a very favorable environment for intensification, as there is a developing upper level ridge located directly above Tropical Cyclone Isaac, and that is why the outflow pattern looks so well defined in nearly all quadrants, although we still have some restriction in the northeast quadrant due to the close proximity of this upper level low. However, as Isaac continues to move on a general west-northwest heading, the wind shear from the east-northeast should become steadily less with time, and if it wasn't for the interaction with Hispaniola and eastern Cuba, I can guarantee you that the Hurricane Center would more than likely be calling for at least a major hurricane within the 3 to 5 day forecast period. Having said that, major hurricane classification is still not out of the realm of possibility, especially if the models begin to trend to the north side or south side of Cuba, which would give the storm more time to develop over the open water. The intensity model guidance is clearly picking up on the favorable conditions other than the potential land interaction, so there's a pretty good consensus that within the next 48 to 96 hours, Isaac will be pushing Category 1 hurricane status. One of the big questions is when exactly will Hurricane or soon-to-be Hurricane Isaac feel the impacts of troughing that is located out across the eastern United States. Based on the latest tropical model suite, which was run at 1 a.m., we can see that the models have shifted slightly toward the east, and they are now in clear agreement with the latest Hurricane Center forecast that the storm is going to pass somewhere over Haiti and eastern Cuba, followed up by a general track towards southeast Florida. Also, we have seen a shift within the GFS operational run, along with the GFS ensemble members which you see here. Remember that on Tuesday afternoon the GFS ensemble consensus was located somewhere out across the southeast Gulf of Mexico, and just to the south of Tampa And although we still have quite a few model members showing that solution, we do see an increasing number that show a track directly over the Florida Peninsula itself, along with a couple that still take it just off the east coast. This is the 48-hour forecast from the operational run of the GFS, and this is valid as of Thursday night. The storm is situated ever so to the south of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and with that northern quadrant being almost directly over the island, you could easily get very strong tropical storm force or even sustained hurricane force winds, especially if the track were to shift ever so slightly to the north. So interest there once again should be bracing for Category 1 hurricane impacts. As we go deeper into the forecast period, the GFS is taking the storm right along the southern coast of the Dominican Republic, then directly over Haiti, and as we go on into early Saturday afternoon, the storm is passing over eastern Cuba, but it then quickly emerges out across the southern Bahamas, and then as we go on into early Monday morning of next week, the storm is approaching South Florida, and as we head on into Tuesday, the remnants of Isaac are forecast to continue northward into Jacksonville and southern Georgia. This is the 500 millibar steering layer representation from the GFS. For the 48-hour forecast period, we can see Isaac just now beginning to enter the picture near Puerto Rico, but as we go deeper into the forecast time frame, we're going to pay more attention to what is occurring out across the United States. And as we go into late Friday night into Saturday morning, we see the making of a shortwave trough diving out of Saskatchewan into the Midwest of the United States, and this is going to help to steadily weaken the ridge as this trough continues to move eastward in the general direction of the Great Lakes. Now, this trough is not going to have too much of an influence over the next 72 to 96 hours, but obviously the GFS thinks that the ridging is already fairly weak over the Bahamas, and that is why it's bringing the storm out across eastern Cuba. And as we go into day 5, you can really see the shortwave trough starting to have more of an influence out across the Ohio Valley. Finally, by Monday night into Tuesday morning, this is where the weakness in the ridging begins to really show up, and that is why the GFS is turning the storm toward the north directly into the Florida Peninsula. Despite the slight eastward shift in both the GFS operational and the GFS ensemble, the latest ECMWF operational and ensemble member suite has not budged at all from the more westerly solution. As you can see, by 48 hours, there's already a couple differences. First of all, the European is not showing an organized tropical cyclone to the south of Puerto Rico. It has a much more disorganized structure of tropical cyclone Isaac, and you can see that persisting into the 72-hour forecast period. But that's not the only difference. Also pay attention to what is occurring out across the Midwest. The European is a little bit slower with the amplification of that trough exiting southwest Canada, and you can see it even more by day 4 and day 5. At this time, the GFS was showing more of a break in the ridging near the Great Lakes, but instead we still have plenty ridging out across the southeast United States and the U.S. eastern seaboard. Therefore, due to the slightly lower intensity of the tropical cyclone combined with the higher ridging over Florida, the European is still supporting a track more toward the west into the southeast Gulf of Mexico, and in this model the ridging does not break out across the Tennessee Valley until day 7, and by that time the storm is still trending toward the central Gulf, and it doesn't really begin to lift northward until days 9 and 10 toward the U.S. central Gulf Coast. I hate to return back to the GFS, but there is something very interesting that I just recently noticed while cutting the video. If we go ahead and take a look at the vorticity and the low levels, all of a sudden within 24 to 36 hours we see this random spoke of low-level vorticity develop along the northeast quadrant of the overall circulation itself, and this is a highly suspect run if you ask me. This could be a convective feedback problem that the GFS is notorious for, and as this unusual vorticity max becomes the more dominant part of the storm in the model, it's going to have the tendency to want to bring it too far to the coast of Puerto Rico toward the north, and I wonder if this is impacting the overall forecast track and therefore the reason why the GFS members have shifted a bit toward the east. In addition, the 6Z run of the GFS just came out within the last 5 minutes or so, so I will incorporate this within the video, and as we look at the low-level vorticity, we don't really see so much of that in the latest GFS run, and as this run finishes all the way into the extended range, sure enough, the GFS has shifted back into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. So with all of these things factored in, this is our non-official 28storms.com 5-day forecast track of Tropical Storm Isaac. If you recall earlier in the video, the 5-day Hurricane Center forecast is situated just to the southeast of Miami in 5 days. We're still pretty close to that, but we are a little closer to the western tip of Cuba due to the inconsistency of the GFS. And although the ECMWF is way off toward the west by itself, you still need to keep the ECMWF solution under consideration, and we are still basically taking a blend between the GFS and European at this time. And just remember that Hispaniola could still greatly alter the forecast, and if it passes directly over, then interest in the Bahamas and the East Coast, including the Carolinas, would still have to closely monitor the storm, as it would be tracking more poleward than we currently anticipate, and also if it deviates ever so gradually to the south of Cuba, then the storm could rapidly intensify and become stronger than what is currently forecast. So that's all we have for this Wednesday morning. Please keep it tuned to 28storms.com and the Hurricane Tracker app for more updates, but more importantly, check out the National Hurricane Center for the latest official information on Isaac.